So Dr. Letty Afwang is an associate professor of the Animal Biology Division of the Institute of Biological Sciences at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. She serves as the vice chair of the Reptiles and Amphibians Technical Working Group Subcommittee for the Philippine Red List of Threatened Committee, PRLC, for wildlife fauna species based on best scientific evidence available. She also serves as curator of the Juscoro M. Umali Wildlife Collection of the UPLB Museum of Natural History. Dr. Afwang authored and co-authored numerous peer-reviewed publications, books, and book chapters on flora and fauna and biodiversity conservation. In 2018, she was awarded the Outstanding Contribution as Technical Reviewer and Editor-in-Chief Award given by the Biodiversity Conservation Society of the Philippines during the 27th Annual Philippine Biodiversity Symposium held in Magalang, Pampanga. Dr. Afwang holds a baccalaureate degree in zoology from UP Diliman, MS in zoology and PhD in environmental science and management from UP Los Baños. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Letty Afwang.
So, magandang umaga sa mga pinakamamahal nating mga taga Busuanga. Actually, this belongs to the Calamianes Island Group, and I've been there for several times. I have loved the area because I got linked to this and an accidental, hindi naman siguro accidental, it was God, this find way na na-meet ko ang mga Reyes, especially Dr. Manny Reyes, and we became engaged in biodiversity enhancement. I have been doing teachers training since 1992 in Luzon, in Visayas, in Mindanao, and I've been doing it. Normally, ang isang biodiversity training, teachers training would last about 3 to 5 days. Dito sa training na to, ang training ko ay kalahating araw lang po. So, expect, my dears, that this is going to be fast. This is going to be heavy, and this is going to be exciting for all of us, hopefully. I spent time to put this all together into one piece that would, hopefully you can absorb within the whole morning, and hopefully would find its way into changing of your value systems for a lifetime. So yeah, brace yourself because we are going to start on, this is my longer lecture. But before I start, let me just read to you my meditation for this morning and a little prayer. In Psalm 5, it says, "Give ear to my words, O Lord, consider my groaning. Give attention to the sound of my cry, my King and my God, for to you I do pray." Verse 11, "But let all who take refuge in you, let them ever sing for joy and spread your protection over them, that those who love your name may exalt you. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield." So this one we hold on because we are in a national and global pandemic. Let us pray that God will cover us with his protection as we learn to value his creation and become instruments into sustaining it to last for more than a lifetime and to last for many generations to come. What we owe our children and their children is that the environment that we see now should not be worse, but should be better than what it has been. God created a beautiful world for us. We are stewards to manage it and make it beautiful. So let's pray a little bit. Panginoon, we pray for your guidance. We pray for your presence. We pray that you touch our hearts for the lessons we are going to learn today. Let it be part of our life from here onwards, so that we can influence the people who will learn from us. We give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen. So this is my topic. This is the topic on biodiversity enhancement. The whole topic that I'm covering is biodiversity enhancement and environmental sustainability. Pag tinignan niyo yung acronym niya, ang ibig sabihin is BEES. Ano ang Tagalog ng BEES? So this again is today, August 6, and we have SEARCA, UPLB, DepEd, and Kansas State University as cooperating partners for this. So my objective here is to understand, to allow you to make us all understand biodiversity and integrate this into teaching values and daily practice. My outline is very simple, and I'll post as as questions, no? What is biodiversity? This is covered in plate 1 to 13. Why is biodiversity important? Why is Philippine biodiversity significant? And then, dapat may map yan. Okay, you see the Philippine map. The Philippine map tells you that Philippine biodiversity is significant. Okay, and then is the Busuanga Island biodiversity important? We will answer that. And then, so this is the island of Busuanga. Tama ba yung inilagay kong ano dyan? Mapa ng Busuanga. Okay, and the last question is, ano ngayon? Importante ang biodiversity. Alam natin kung anong biodiversity. Maganda ang biodiversity ng Busuanga. So what? Okay, ano ngayon? Apektado ka ba? Is it going to affect your lifestyle, your teaching style, your daily practice? Is it going to affect your values? So that's what we are pushing into. I start off with this quote from Baba Duong, a synagelist conservationist, who says, in the end, we will conserve only what we love, and we will love only what we understand, and we understand only what we are taught. I take this note as very important. First, if we look at the people, they will be able to conserve, love, and understand what you teach. Why? Because we are teachers. Nilagay ko sa pagtatagalog ng translation, pagsisimula tayo sa kamalayan, malay naman natin, may malay tayo na may mga gumagalaw at lumilipad dyan na mga bagay-bagay. Pero kailangan yung mga namamalaya natin yan, nauunawaan natin. At sa ating pangunawa, tayo ay tutugon, pwedeng ikibit balikat natin, pero pwedeng gumalaw tayo. Sa ating paggalaw, magkakaroon tayo ng katuparan, at ang katuparan natin ay maipakita na tayo ay mapagkakatiwalaan sa pagmamaneha, management, and stewardship of the creation that we have been born into. So challenging, ano? So the Earth is the most special planet in one of the many galaxies. If you haven't seen this, siguro I would encourage you, go to YouTube, look for Louis Giglio, and he will give you a very good picture of how complex the big universe is. But in that complexity, there is one special planet, and that is the blue Earth. The blue Earth is where we live in. All of these things, I would believe, and I have always believed, is part of God's creation. But He has placed the earth as one of its most special creation because life is in there. Now, this earth is sustained. Bakit may buhay sa lupa, sa earth? Kasi merong atmosphere, air, merong tubig, hydrosphere, at merong lupa, geosphere. These three non-living components are the ones that sustain the life that moves in the biosphere. Now, this biosphere is what we call our home. It is called the oikos. Or this is the reason why we have the term ecology, because oikos is home, logos is study. So putting it together, it becomes ecology. So it's studying the home where we belong. Now, biodiversity, to be defined, it is the one that covers everything that has life on Earth. It has three components: genetic diversity, species diversity, and habitat ecosystem diversity. The genetic diversity is found right inside the cells. Can you relate to me? Guys, no, the genetic diversity, may background naman po kayo dito. Ang lahat ng living organisms ay may genes, may DNA. At ang DNA na yan, ang siyang humahawak ng code system that defines what species are. No? It differentiates species from one another, and it even differentiates individuals from one another. Your characteristic from your neighbor and your colleague there is defined by the tiny differentiations in the genetic diversity code that you have. Pare-pareho tayong merong 46 chromosomes sa cell natin at meron tayong 3 trillion cells in our bodies. Pero yung genetic code na yan, napaka-importante, made up of tiny molecules na pag pinagdugsong-dugsong mo pag in-stretch out ang chromosome para makuha yung totoong length ng DNA ng 46 chromosomes, tapos pinagdagdag mo lahat ng laman ng cells. Ang haba niyan ay mula dito, papunta sa buwan, pabalik pa dito. Okay, that's how long it is. That's how complex it is. That's how complex each species is made of. And that is what defines species diversity. But that diversity also of the species is very important to be sustained. And that sustainability is dependent on the habitat or ecosystem diversity. The variations in the environment are the ones that define the adaptations of the species. The variations of the environment are the ones that define the species that would comprise the community or the organized group that interact with one another so that life can continuously be sustained. So bio means life, diversity means variety. So biodiversity is the variety of life forms in an ecosystem. And in Filipino, this is also translated as samot-saring buhay. All the various components of the earth that has life. So whether it is cultivated, whether you see it or not, whether you value it or not, whether it is common or not, anything that has life is part of biodiversity. Let me differentiate it to the next concept, which is wildlife. Ang tawag sa mga bagay na tumitira, na hindi mo inaalagaan, hindi mo itinatanim, hindi mo, mabubuhay siya kahit wala kang pakialam, nabubuhay siya doon, noong una pa, nabubuhay siya doon kahit hindi mo siya, wala kang kaunawaan kung sino man siya. This is wildlife. Any living organism, any part of the biodiversity whose life system is not manipulated or is not managed by man is called wildlife. They are the organisms that live freely in their natural habitats. Okay, are you still with me, guys? Yeah?
Yes.
So I'll continue. Yes, kasi parang seryoso, wala akong naririnig. But anyway, I continue. Pasensya na kayo kasi teacher talaga ako. Gusto ko may interaction. So biodiversity conservation to be defined is where I live or where I move as a wildlife biologist. Yan po ang ginagawa ko bilang isang wildlife biologist, to conserve, no? And there are many ways of conservation. This is the protection and management of biodiversity to obtain resources for sustainable development. Biodiversity conservation has three main objectives: to preserve diversity of species, to sustain utilization of species and ecosystem, and to maintain life-supporting systems and ecological processes. Malawak siya. Hindi siya kaya ng iisang tao, hindi siya kaya ng iisang organisasyon. It is a multidimensional and multifaceted program. Now, biodiversity enhancement is similar with conservation, but it extends beyond, no? It encompasses the conservation and enhancement of wildlife habitats and entails active measures to increase biodiversity interest of a targeted area. In enhancement, we look at areas or places or organisms that may necessarily need boosting and augmentation. Mga na-disturb na ng mga lugar na pwede nating i-restore, na pwede na mga lugar na dati namang walang masyadong biodiversity pero magkakaroon. Kung naalala niyo yung lecture ni Dr. Reyes last time, that is a practice of biodiversity enhancement. Sa halip na mga damo na lang, nagdagdag sila ng ibang species ng plants, at nung nagkaroon ng ibang species ng plants, naturally dumating si butterfly, dumating si bees, dumating ang ibang insekto, dumating ang mga ibon, at definitely yung soil ay naging mas mayaman. Dumating ang enrichment of the area. And so there has been augmentation and boosting. Sa halip na 1 to 3 species lang ng grasses ang nandun, naging 20 plus species composed of the following. Ito yung mga types of biodiversity or components of biodiversity. 1, we have the vertebrates, animals. Fauna are the animals. Birds, amphibians, reptiles, mammals. Okay? And invertebrates. So marami tayong invertebrates. Corals, spiders, arthropods, insects, coelenterates, mga ganyan. Mga invertebrata, mga organisms na walang backbone. Okay, mga maliliit sila, usually living out there, but pati lamok kasama sa invertebrates. No? And then you have the flora, the plants, no? The beautiful plants. In fact, in the assessment of the components of the living systems, it is the plants that occupies the highest or the biggest volume of biomass. No, siya yung pinakamabigat sa ilalim ng pundasyon sa lahat ng mga nabubuhay sa ibabaw ng mundo. Siya ang pinakamarami in terms of biomass. Bakit? Kasi siya yung producer. Bakit? Kasi siya yung mas nagpapakain ng mas marami. Okay? Itinalaga na mas marami siya para mas marami siyang masiservisyon. Fungi. Kasama yan sa biodiversity? Opo, kasama yan. Sila ang mga nagpapabulok ng mga bagay-bagay. Bakit? Kasi kailangan ng mabulok para magkaroon ng pagbabalik ng mga importanteng bagay sa lupa upang magamit ulit sa recycling. Okay? Pag wala po tayong pagbubulok sa ibabaw ng lupa, pwede po tayong mamatay, hindi tayo mabubulok, magiging zombie tayo. Okay? If we do not decompose, there is no breakdown. And if we do not have a breakdown, we don't return to the earth. And if we don't return to the earth, there is no recycling of nutrients. And so there is no regeneration of life. The fungi are very much responsible. The rhizomes that encompass ang extensive ng ng influence ito. Hindi natin nakikita, pero ang mga ugat ng ating mga puno ay tinatakpan ng maraming rhizomes ng mga fungi upang maging mas epektibo sila sa pag-absorb ng mga nutrients na kailangan nila para sila ay magbunga, para sila ay magkaroon ng photosynthetic process, and para maging tuloy-tuloy ang kanilang pagsiservisyo sa mga nangangailangan ng pagkain katulad natin. Protista. Ito ang mga microscopic organisms. Usually, we don't see them with our naked eye. We see them under the microscope, but they are there. No? Marami sa protista ay pagkain ng mga malalaking mga hayop sa karagatan at sa mga kailugan. This is what we call the plankton. Merong phytoplankton or plant plankton or zooplankton or animal plankton or animal-like and plant-like planktons. Yung mga plant-like plankton ay may chlorophyll katulad ng halaman. Kaya nakakapag-photosynthesize sila. Kapag nagpo-photosynthesize sila, nagpo-produce sila ng dagdag na pagkain at enerhiya. Okay? So, alam nyo ba na ang baleen whale ay walang ipin at wala siyang ibang pangkain kundi yung parang walis doon sa kanyang bibig. At pag gumanon ang kanyang bibig ay ngangasabi niya yung buong malaking amount ng tubig at yung tubig na yun ay it contains the plankton that would sustain it for life. Ang baleen whale would outlive the humans. It can live up to 200 years. Okay? So, yun lang ang kinakain niya, mga plankton. And then the prokaryotes are the smaller groups that rarely would we see. We see them under high-powered microscopes, no? Under oil immersion sa compound microscopes, or even in higher levels of microscopy. Many of these are part of our body systems. Kunwari katulad ng E. coli, nasa bituka po natin yan. Natural na nasa bituka natin, facilitating digestion and clean up of our digestive system. But many of them can cause diseases. Kapag accidentally nakakain ka ng pagkain na may E. coli na hindi galing sa loob ng katawan mo, magkakaroon ka ng mag-LBM ka at pwede mong ikamatay. So this, tandaan natin, this is the part of the biodiversity that we are talking about. No? The biodiversity can be part of what is domesticated and what is cultured, but much of them are actually wildlife. No? Much of them, a bigger bulk of them, are wildlife. Ang nakakalungkot lang, these wildlife have come into a level of threat. So, itutuloy ko lang kasi I have to ensure that we understand everything step by step. So, these life forms comprise biodiversity and respond to a changing environment or ecosystem composed of the abiotic and biotic components. Tandaan niyo yung tatlong circle kanina, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and geosphere. These are the abiotic components. The biotic components are the living systems. So there is an intricate and complicated interaction among all of this. Parang hindi naman natin, kahit hindi naman natin pinapakialaman yan, ito kunwari, itong mga invertebrates and mga decomposers na to, sino bang naghahanap ng mga decomposers? At sino bang nag-aaral niyan? You just have a few specialized people who are doing this, no? Not few, marami rin. Okay? But not everybody would be interested in studying or understanding the decomposers, tama? But they are there and they influence the environment where we live in. They interact in the dynamic exchange of matter and energy. But many times, dahil hindi naman natin na-encuentro, we take them for granted. So this is the kind of interactive composition of the ecosystem where we live in. It is composed of biotic and abiotic components. These biotic components is made up of communities, which are made up of populations. A population is made up of one single species, and this species, kunwari, a population of humans, a population of single spiders, a population of Crocodylus porosus, a population of turtles, ganyan. Okay? Now, the abiotic components you have... May tanong po? Mag-raise lang po kayo ng hand nyo if you need, if I'm overloading you. Pero, yeah, you have to brace yourself. Hawak kayo sa upuan ha, kasi tuloy-tuloy po ito. Nasa 11th, nasa 13th slide pa lang tayo, more than 100 itong slides natin. So you have energy, matter. Matter creates habitats to live. The biotic components depend on the habitats. The habitat shapes the niche. The niche is the role of each of the living species components, which interacts and carry out their specific functions. The niche may be, they can be producers, they can be consumers, they can be composers. Ano po tayo dyan? We are the consumers. Hindi naman tayo nag-photosynthesize. Producers would be those who do the photosynthetic. Now, producers are eaten by consumers. Consumers are broken down by decomposers. Even producers are broken down by decomposers. And so the decomposers facilitate eventual recycling of matter. And this release of the nutrients and important or essential chemicals are used to make new organic compounds. These organic compounds are used by the producers, which are eaten by the which are broken by the decomposers. Kita nyo yung cycle, kita nyo yung composition, kita nyo yung interaction, and then energy somehow is a bigger part of energy is lost as heat, because energy is free, especially the radiant energy. Unlimited ang araw, di ba? Mas marami noon nawawala, pero maraming parte noon ay inaabsorb ng mga halaman. Kailangan ng halaman yan para sa photosynthesis. So they are lost as radiated heat to the space. And then, ayan, this is dispersed and goes to the producers, which affect. So yan po, nakita nyo ang complexity. Everyone has an important role to play. Loss of one can be destructive. Nagsira ka ng habitat, makakasira ka ng niche, may mawawala kang producer, may posibleng consumer ka, nagtapon ka ng lason sa lupa, namatay si decomposer, hindi magiging maganda ang release ng nutrients, and so hindi magiging rich ang lupa, and then yon ay hindi magagamit ng producers. Kukulangin tayo sa productivity or enrichment of the ecosystem. I hope that makes it clarity. Now, important terms in biodiversity. Again, sabi ko kanina, endemic. These are organisms that are found only in a place and in no other place of the world. Example of Philippine endemics, Philippine eagle. Sa Pilipinas lang makikita. Yung binigay kong sa inyo kanina poster, pinakita kong poster sa inyo, these are the hornbills. Anong Tagalog na hornbill? Sige. Hindi ko matanda.
Kalaw.
Ayun, kalaw. Salamat. Megadiverse contains the highest levels of diversity, especially in endemism. There are 17 megadiversity countries in the whole world. The Philippines is second to the smallest country, but it is among those 17, but it is the richest in terms of endemism. So red list are the categories of species whose survivals are threatened. Maraming klase ng red list, no? Critically endangered, vulnerable. Ipapaliwanag ko mamaya. And then the invasive alien species, tawag dyan, IAS, these are introduced species that have multiplied and threatens the local species. Example ng invasive species, yung golden apple snail, yung Gimelina, yung yung Rhinella marina, yung karag, na hindi yung karag ni dyan sa Palawan, because we have our own Ingerophrynus philippinicus, endemic toad natin siya, at hindi yun ang dapat pinapatay. Huwag niyong pababayaang makapasok sa inyo ang Rhinella marina dahil yan ay invasive alien species. It came from South America, and it has invaded all places of the whole world. IUCN, or the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, is the global authority on defining the status of organisms in the red list. How do they do it? They consult species specialists in the world. I have been part of the SSP, species specialist for amphibians and reptiles. And our data, our information are the ones that are taken by the IUCN to help define the status of the Philippine wildlife. The CITES is the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. It is an international agreement between governments that tells us that certain organisms should not be traded or should not be touched, no? Especially when they are threatened for their survival. Merong CITES 1 list, CITES 2 list, and other allowable lists, no? Pag nasa CITES 1 ka, ang sagot sa international trade is no, do not trade them unless, of course, you have a captive breeding program that produces them. Okay, so meron kunwari yung Crocodylus porosus or crocodile farms, threatened ang crocodiles pero may nagbebenta ng crocodiles. Now, those sold out crocodile meat and crocodile leather and crocodile materials, they do not come from the wild. They come from the captive breeding programs, which is monitored internationally. The Wildlife Act is the Republic RA 9147, which is also known as the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act, that provides high priority to conservation and protection of wildlife resources and their habitats. It is through the Wildlife Act that we have imposed the requirement of the gratuitous permit that comes from the DNR if anyone is ever going to do a study or a survey in the wild. No, hindi ka pwedeng lumabas para basta-basta mag-aral or maghuli ng mga species kung wala kang gratuitous permit na galing sa gobyerno or galing sa DENR. No? So lahat kami or lahat ng sino mang gustong gumawa ng pag-aaral ay kailangan naiintindihan niya ang Wildlife Act at sumusunod siya sa pagkuha ng gratuitous permit. The Philippine Red List Committee for Wildlife Flora and the Philippine Plant Conservation Committee are the two national bodies created by the DENR to be similar to the IUCN. Kung IUCN is global, PRLC and PCCC is the national committees that defines which of our wildlife organisms are critically endangered, vulnerable, least concern, etc. Kasama po ako sa PRLC. Yun nga po, as vice chair po ako sa amphibians, although kasama rin po ako sa reptiles. Okay. So the IUCN categories for conservation are as follows. O, galing sa IUCN ito, no, dinefine ko lang, ito yung diagram niya. Pag extinct, wala na siya. Hindi mo na siya makikita. Okay, katulad ng dodo, katulad ng maraming yung giant elephant and rhinoceros, etc. No? So extinct in the wild, hindi mo siya makikita sa wild na, pero meron pang natitira konti sa mga zoos, rare zoos. And then critically endangered, ito po yung categorization niya, no known individuals remaining, yun siya, ito siya. Extinct in the wild, no known to survive in captivity. And then meron kang threatened, may tatlong level ng threatened, critically endangered, endangered, and vulnerable. So from here going up, the lowest level of concern for extinction is the least concern. The highest critically endangered level is, the highest threatened level is the critically endangered. Etong extinct in the wild, medyo waiting for extinction na lang yan kasi wala na siya sa wild. Nasa mga zoo na lang. Marami nag-aaral ngayon to preserve the genome, or marami ding nag-aaral para i-crossbreed, para restore. Pero marami pong, mahirap pong gawin yun. Hindi nga po natin kayang gawin yun sa Pilipinas yet so far. No? But we have critically endangered species like the Philippine eagle, the tamarao, the katala. Marami po tayong critically endangered na kailangang ingatan natin. Endangered has a lower risk of extinction in the wild compared to the critically endangered. And then the vulnerable, again, has a high risk of endangerment in the wild. It undergoes a lot of threatening conditions also, like collection. Near threatened could be likely to become endangered. And least concern are those at the lowest risk. No? Hindi siya kahit na ma-disturb, hindi tayo mag-aalala kasi malaki yung population niya. However, not all of the wildlife has been thoroughly studied. Kaya may mga rare at newly discovered wildlife na kulang tayo sa datos, kulang tayo sa kaalaman. Alam nyo naman, ang scientists, no, we rely on data. We cannot rely on theories alone and unbased information. And then those that have not been evaluated may be in the list of wildlife but has not yet been reviewed by the committee. So that is NA. Okay, so medyo tandaan nyo po yan kasi importante yan. Mamaya pagdala ko sa inyo, pag nag-tour tayo sa mga important biodiversity species natin. So endangered species, categories and criteria, I just place this, although I won't go into the details, but ang ibig ko lang sabihin, na ipaliwanag ko na yan kanina, these categorizations go through a meticulous review and there are criteria that has to be followed. You have to evaluate the population reduction rate, how much is lost, and then geographic range, how far does it go, what is the extent of its occurrence and its occupancy, and then the population size. The smaller the population size, the more vulnerable it becomes. And then the population restrictions is how many possible populations are productive to produce a next generation. And then extinct, probably in the wild. Ito yung categorizations niya. So, kunwari yung sa critically endangered, at least 50% within the next years or 3 generations. Pag hindi yan inalagaan, matitigok na yan sa 3 henerasyon or within 10 years. Yan. Sa endangered, mga 20 years ang possible extinction niya. Extinction niya. Pag vulnerable, mga 100 years, may matitira-tira pa siyang konti. So makikita natin na mas pinakamataas talaga ang threat doon sa critically endangered. Ito, hindi ko alam kung may pag-asa pa. Depende sa research na magagawa. Ito, talagang hanggang libro na lang, hanggang litrato na lang, hanggang museum na lang natin sila makikita na wala na sila. Nasira na sila dahil sa hindi natin pagkakaunawa sa kanilang importansya. Let's go to yung importance. No? Bakit kailangang aralin at maunawaan ang wildlife, ang biodiversity? Classify ko to sa 4 para mas madali: economic value, ecological value, educational aesthetic value, ethnocultural and aesthetic value. Madaling ang tandaan, 4 na ekonomiya, ekologika, edukasyon, at ethnokultura. Okay? So, teachers, kayang-kaya natin yan, ano? Maintindihan. Ito pa yung emphasis. I will re-emphasize the 4 E's. For example, economic value food. Wow, ang sarap. Lahat tayo ay nakadepende sa kanila sa pagkain. Next, marami rin sa kanila, aside from food, you have food supplements. No? These are food supplements and health supplements. Bakit may cobra dyan, ma'am? Ang vaccine po kasi ay galing din sa cobra. Ang pang-vaccine mo kapag nakagat ka ng ahas, yung ituturok sa'yo ay galing din sa cobra. Kasi tinurok lang, it went through a process so that the antibodies there, your bodies that can produce antibodies that will help degrade or destroy the venom that has gotten into your body system nung nakagat ka. Okay, alam naman natin yung mga advertisement, yung salabat, and then we have economic value. Ayan, makita. Medicinal herbs for flu. Ayan, dami pala, no? Medicine herbs for anxiety treatment. Familiar kayo sa peppermint. Familiar kayo sa ginkgo. Familiar kayo sa lavender. Okay? Familiar kayo sa chamomile. Wala siya dito. Pero yon. So, marami na tayong mga ganyan. Awareness into the important functions of the natural herbs and ecosystem or ecological materials that we have. Pero sa totoo lang, ang ating indigenous people, dati na po nilang ginagamit yan. Pangtapal sa sugat, yung dinikdik na dahon ng bayabas. Okay. Pangsakit sa tiyan, yung pinakulo ang dahon ng guyabano. Pangtanggal ng ano ba yun? Alipunga, yung biglang nawala sa isip ko yung pangalan ng halaman. Itatapal mo lang. Ganon. So this has been practiced by our native people, but it is now being appreciated by the pharmaceuticals and the medical. Okay, economic value, ayan naman. Hindi ko na ipapaliwanag. Ito sa kanila, basic items. Diyan na sila nakatira. Yan ay kanilang mga, parang backpack nila yan. Tingnan nyo. Pero tayo, naging moderna tayo, pinatay natin yung mga ahas, ginawa nating bag, which is not, of course, this is not correct, no? We have global forestry industries worth about $330 billion in annual timber sales. Tropical countries account for 1/4 of the world's trade in timber. About 90% of the world's poor depend on forests for a portion of their livelihood. They are very, very important in economics or in our economy. Next would be, the next E is ecological value. Nagno-notes po ba kayo? Mag-notes po kayo kasi mamaya po kailangan natin sa sa post-test. Yay! Okay, nakapunta na po ba kayo dito? Ang ganda-ganda ng Tinugay Falls. Okay, meron po tayong sa Ilocos Norte, may ganyan tayo. So they provide clean water for drinking. Pag namumundok po kami, hindi po kami basta nagdadala ng mga mga galon-galon na tubig na galing sa baba at binibili nyo araw-araw. Naghahanap po kami ng fresh water coming from the mountains, especially in the watershed areas. Diyan po kami naliligo. Pag po kami namumundok, minsan ay 3 linggo, 1 buwan po kami, nakakamp lang po kami, nabubuhay po kami dyan. Pero meron din food production areas. The land can be used as a place for either man-manipulated areas like gardens and farms, but others, most of them are natural areas of production and productivity. Okay, ecological value, air and water purification. Okay, plants sequester carbon dioxide and purifies water, purifies air. Actually, water vapor facilitates cleanup also, so that the water that evaporates from the sea and the water systems evaporates, it goes up to the sky, it becomes a cloud, and it pours down back to us as a blessing in the form of clean rainwater. Tapos tayo, ang dami nating rainwater. Hindi natin pinapansin. Nagagalit pa tayo pag bumabaha. Ipunin kaya natin yan, para wala ng dryness. Pag naipon natin during the time na dry ang lupa, di may kukuhanin tayong tubig para pangdilig sa ating mga halaman at sa mga natitigang na mga lupa. Kaso, dahil libre si ulan, wala lang tayong kiyeme, di umulan lang siya, tapos na. Pag umaraw naman at walang ulan, nagagalit tayo. Paano kung inipon natin yung ulan? Dinagamit pa natin. So, importance of biodiversity, again, ecological value, ecosystems that facilitate food production. Wala naman tayong ginawa dyan kundi mangolekta lang ng pagkain, di ba? How great our God is. He provides everything for free. The food, the water, the air. Ganyan. It is all there. All He asked us is to be good stewards. Huwag niyong abusuhin. Huwag niyong sobrahan ang pangungulekta. Huwag niyong sirain. Kasi kung aalagaan niya yan, aalagaan din niya kayo. Fish is the second most important staple food of Filipinos. Some $538,000 worth of fish can be produced by Philippine mangroves per hectare per year, according to Primavera's studies. Si Dr. Primavera is the expert on Philippine mangroves. No? Every square kilometer of coral reefs can supply up to 35 tons of edible and economically important fish every year. Ito yung habitat nila. This is their home. This is where they play, they swim, they love one another, they grow, they are happy there. But sometimes we forget and we destroy. Nagiging dramatic na po ako, no? Hindi naman. Ecological value, ang hindi ko po nailagay dito is they are also indicator species. But ecological value, they facilitate pollination. Importante po ang pollination sa genetic exchange, no? Yung ginagawa ng bat na yan, dinilaan niya yan, kuha niya yung pollen galing sa stamen, tapos punta siya sa kabilang bulaklak, nagkakaroon ng genetic exchange kasi yung pollen na dala ng balahibo niya pupunta doon sa bulaklak, magiging diverse. Yung buto na magagawa nito because of the cross-pollination will be different from its parents. So, meron kang diversification dyan. The bee plays a very important role. No? This is a bird that, this is a bird nest, and the tree that hosts that bird nest plays also an important role. So it facilitates that. This one facilitates seed dispersal. Pag lipad niya, lalagay niya sa lalamunan niya, lilipad siya doon sa anak niya, pakakainin niya, may mga mahuhulog, hindi masushoot doon sa bibig ng anak niya, o edi laglag siya doon sa ibang lugar. So it disperses the seed. Okay? Ganyan silang lahat, pati yung mga bats na yan. So there is a random mixing of genes by the transfer of pollen grains. And these organisms usually are known as keystone mutualists. Bakit keystone? Keystone is a cornerstone. It plays a very, very important role. Kasi pag natanggal siya, yung function niya as, let's say, seed disperser, masisira, mawawala. So ito namang dependent sa kanya sa dispersal, hindi na siya madi-disperse. So yung pagkawala niya may maapektohang iba. So that is what the keystone species are, or keystone mutualists. There is an inherent partnership between organisms, plant and animals, and other groups that makes them bound to each other because of their innate behavior and function. Okay, and then you have the ecological value, which is the genetic resources. Ang sabi ko dito is the genes are not necessarily easily seen. They are inside the cell, but the genetic makeup of organisms is very important to sustain them through generations of life. What may be adaptable to conditions now may not necessarily be adaptable to next conditions. Example, sabi nila yung COVID, nag-mutate. Pero di ba may mga asymptomatic sa COVID na mga tao? And yes, mga tao. These are already, there's a difference between a COVID attacked person who is affected and is not is symptomatic. Nagsasuffer siya. But there's a COVID affected person who is asymptomatic. Magkaiba ang genetic makeup niyang dalawang yan. No? One is able to tolerate and eventually kill it off. After 14 days, mamamatay yung COVID sa body system niya. Okay? So, magkaibang genetic makeup niyan. So, he's going to live for the next generation. Kung nakasurvive si symptomatic ngayon, dahil sa gamot. Pero si asymptomatic, nakasurvive siya dahil meron siyang natural na panglaban. So, magkaiba sila ng genetic makeup. So, that is importance of genetic diversity. Kaya kailangan, merong iba-iba, katulad lang sa saging, o magkakaiba yan, magkakaiba ang genetic makeup. Pero sa totoo lang, ang chromosomes niyan, pareho lang. Parang tao din. Na iba, may isang set lang ng chromosomes. By the way, one species has similar sets of chromosomes, but the coding system would be different. Okay? So ecological value, again, would be ecological health. It facilitates nutrient cycling. Carbon sequestration is very important. Kaya in-encourage ang planting in the cities, no? Or ang ganda ng, hindi naman ina-advertise ko yung Ayala, pero I love the layout system of the Ayala. Kasi pag nag-layout sila sa development programs nila, laging may puno, laging may halaman. Why? Because the trees absorb carbon dioxide, no? That is carbon sequestration. Not only is there sequestration in the leaves though, meron din sa soil, no? So, ano yung carbon? Carbon is the basic essential element of photosynthesis. The plant leaves, the chlorophyll captures CO2, radiant energy, processes it, and it goes into translated into growth and fruits and flowers, no? Fruits and flowers and leaves. Ano, sino nakikinabang dyan? Tayo. We collect them, no? Of course, we don't kill we should not be killing the plants. No? Kasi sila yung nagpo-produce ng fruits. But they need, carbon dioxide is a necessity for their life. So having trees and plants around would help the environment clear off carbon because they are absorbed. So yun ang importansya ng carbon sequestration. So like, for example, ito, ecological value, you have a beautiful forest area there with natural water systems. A very, very important function of that is that these trees sequester the carbon. So total ecosystem carbon is 80 tons per acre. Soil respiration would produce 2.2 tons of carbon per acre yearly, and then these are absorbed by the leaves and the trees and the tree roots, and then this carbon is translated into fruits and leaves and growth. O diba? Kailangan ba natin ng carbon dioxide? Hindi. Tayo ang nagpo-produce ng carbon dioxide. Pag humihinga tayo, absorb natin ng O2, oxygen. Pag nag-exhale tayo, nilalabas natin si CO2. Pag puro CO2 yan sa paligid natin, we die. But we don't die, di ba? Why? Because CO2 is dispersed and CO2 is absorbed by the trees around us. And oxygen continues. Who produces oxygen? The trees, no? Part of their photosynthesis, output niya is water, fruit, and oxygen. Okay? Fruit, growth, oxygen. Yan. Those are the products. So, exchange lang tayo. Kailangan nila ng CO2, bigay natin. Kailangan natin ng O2, bigay nila sa atin. Ang ganda ng relationship. And then, as I said, ecological value. There is a necessity for nutrient cycling. Carbon cycle, ito na yung cycle ng carbon dioxide. Phosphorus cycle, kailangan iikot siya. Nitrogen cycle, water cycle, oxygen cycle. Madaling natin naiintindihan ang water cycle, evaporation, transpiration, and then rain. Okay? Oxygen cycle, exchange of CO2 and oxygen between humans and plants. Carbon cycle, ganun din. Carbon is absorbed by us. We take in carbon sa katawan natin. Siguro review na lang to, no? There are 4 biomolecules in our body system, no? You have the energy biomolecules, the structural biomolecules, the genetic biomolecules, and the supportive biomolecules, no? Fat, carbohydrates, DNA, fats and lipids, and proteins. Tayo made up of proteins mostly, no? Our energy comes from the carbohydrates. Our fats and lipids, ayan, na mumutagtag sa ating mga bilbil, no? But it is also the one that facilitates processes in our body systems, and of course our DNA, no? It has to be there. What we take in as a carbon for our body is the food, the starch that we get from the plants. But what we store as carbon in our body system is sugars that we translated into proteins. Okay? And so, kailangan bumalik yan. I mean, na-store natin partially, but when we die, it goes back to the soil. It becomes carbon, inorganic carbon, because it is transformed by the decomposers. Lahat yan dumadaan sa decomposition para maging inorganic form. At pag inorganic form, tsaka pa lang siya magagamit ng mga halaman for photosynthesis. So, I hope you got the process of cycling, no? Nutrient cycling, and each one of these organisms, components of biodiversity, kita nyo yan, may fungi, may bacteria, may animals. The composers and the detritus feeders are the ones that facilitates recycling. And then we have the plants, of course, the producers, and the rest of the animals are the consumers. Ayan, meron siya sa tubig, meron siya sa forest, it is everywhere. It has to happen everywhere, continuously, in order to sustain life. Okay, ecological value, ayan, forest ensure cloud formation, etc. Preserve forests of 3 million hectares contain 300.7 and so on. So we have climate modification, drought, erosion, and food control. Educational value. Trabaho po ito ng Mindoro Biodiversity Conservation Foundation. Project po namin ito sa Mindoro on biodiversity conservation. So we try to educate people, and we have mascots here. May crocodile mascot nga doon. We have different mascots, and we influence the minds of people, especially the children. This we visit regularly in Nauhan Lake in Mindoro. And we count them, we monitor them. This one is Jof Tabaranza, one of our best program managers. He's very good in photography as well as in biological research. Ayan. So we do educational value, provides for knowledge, values, recreation, tourism, and conservation. And the fourth one would be the ethnocultural and aesthetic values. They are very much important with our indigenous peoples. We put value to them as our national heritage. We put value to them as our artistic heritage. This is in Nakar. No? These are students who try to campaign kasi may Philippine Eagle doon sa Sierra Madre. This is what they did. They generated they made a Philippine Eagle dance performance. And of course, this kalaw, headdress yan ng mga native people. So, ethno-ecological values. Ethnocultural and aesthetic values, aesthetic sites. Ito, nasa inyo po yan, Kalawit Safari. Medyo dapat lang kailangan. Although these are foreign species, they are isolated in the island. They attract tourists, and they are also used for education and conservation campaign, although medyo hindi siya masyadong thriving strongly, no? Dapat ang ilagay ko dito yung Kingfisher's Park dyan sa inyo, yung kila Dr. Manny Reyes. Okay, but these beautiful places provide for us our ethnocultural and aesthetic values. So why is Philippine biodiversity important? Chapter 2. Chapter 1 lang yun. Okay, buhay pa kayo? Gising pa kayo? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Gising na gising pa.
Yan. I hope you are enticed, and I hope I have your interest with you, and mag-grab na lang kaya ng mani dyan or tubig na iinumin nyo. So let's go to Philippine biodiversity. I say, why is Philippine biodiversity important? Well, yes, as I said kanina, there are 17 countries in the whole world that contains the Earth's biodiversity between 70 to 80%, which are found only in their places. This is the Philippines. It is number 13. The biggest of them is Brazil. Okay, the biggest area is Brazil. Okay, the Philippines is one of the smallest. Okay, there. So, susunod dyan would be South America, and then yung mga malalaki, Brazil, South America, southern part of North America, Australia, China. Okay, and you have Ecuador is the smallest area. The Philippines is the second to the smallest area. Yun sila, 6 Ecuador and the Philippines. They contain, imagine, of the whole part of the whole world, they contain 70 and 80% of the world's plant, 70% of the plant species, 80% of the animal species are in this 17 mega diverse list of countries. Okay. These lists are the endemic, found only in, found only in the Philippines, found only in Madagascar, found only in Ecuador. Pag nawala yan, wala na siya sa buong mundo. That's how that's how mega diversity is important. The Philippines is a very high diversity country. As I said, it is one of the 17. So I try to compare it with Ecuador, with Brazil and the Philippines. It both has high endemicity and has high diversity. It ranks 5th in the number of plant species and maintains 5% of the world's flora. 5% yan, ang liit-liit niya. Okay. Now, to compare Brazil and the Philippines, the area of Brazil is about 8.5 million. The Philippines is about 300,000 only. So the percentage of that land mass is about, the Philippines is only 3.52% of Brazil. But if you look at the endemic fauna, you have 45%, 45.77% endemicity of the Philippines compared to Brazil. Sa endemic flora, you have, sa lawak na yan, 18,400 lang ang endemic flora niya. Sa liit na yan, meron ka na agad 6,286 endemic plants in the Philippines. Compared sa graph, ayan siya, ito yung area niya, ang liit ng Pilipinas. Pero sa fauna, ayan, mataas ang Brazil. Sa flora, ang taas ng Brazil, ang taas ng Pilipinas. Endemic fauna, ito ang halos half-half sila o endemic flora o halos half-half din. Ganon ka-importante. Kaya the Philippines compared to the rest of the mega diversity countries is the most important endemic nation in the whole world on a per area basis. Pag nag-compare ka ng per area basis, oo nga, maraming bilang yan. Pero pag tiningnan mo sa per area basis, lamang na lamang ang Pilipinas. So that should make us proud as Filipinos. Our country hosts a lot of endemic countries that could not be found in the other parts of the whole world. Okay, now to explain, the Philippines has a very beautiful background biogeography. I can explain this in more detail sana if we have more time, pero ito lang, the Philippines used to be an island of greater segments, no? These are islands called the Paik or Pleistocene Aggregate Island Models. Ganyan dati ang Pilipinas. Malawak at dugtong-dugtong. At ito pa, Palawan, nakakabit pa yan sa Sabah. Okay? Kaya lang, nung nagka-Pleistocene, umakyat ang tubig, nagmelt ang ice sa glaciers, at naging mas malalim siya ng 120 meters deep. So ang nangyari, nagkahiwalay si isles. And those islands, in those islands, nagkaroon ngayon ng, hindi maganda ang fitting ko sa map, pero nagkaroon ngayon ng segregation. Now, in that segregation of the islands, yung mga nakakulong sa isla, nag-speciate. Yung nag-speciate, nagkaroon ng diversification. Yung nag-diversify, and the island endemics na siya. Kaya, ayun, ang yaman-yaman ng Pilipinas sa endemism. Camiguin alone is a very small island, and Sibuyan alone is another small island, but it has very, very, very high biodiversity endemicity. Yan po ang kwento behind why the Philippines has a very high endemic biodiversity. So, a summary, there is a total of 47% endemicity of Philippine fauna. You have about 683 species. 35% are endemic. Sa reptiles, you have 365 species. 72% are endemic. Sa fishes, you have 344 species. 24% are endemic. Kasi naman, nasa dagat yung iba. Ang dagat naman, dugsong-dugsong, di ba? And then 214 species, you have 58% are endemic. 116 species of amphibians, 84% are endemic. Yay! Ang taas ng ating endemicity. Note, that is found only in the Philippines. Nowhere else in the whole world. Okay? So, ganun siya ka-importante. Ayan, pagdating naman sa flora, total na lang 16,000 counted so far. 16,223 species. Endemics there are 6,286. Ang hindi ko na idagdag sa plates ko ay, pasensya na kayo sa aso naming malaki. Rottweiler po yun, maingay. We have 6,286 endemic plant species. But what I forgot is the Philippines is also a hotspot. Ibig sabihin, pag a hotspot, there is a high level of threat in its biodiversity. And here I have included the total number of plants that are threatened. We have 526 threatened species. Ang threatened species, naalala nyo kanina, critically endangered, vulnerable. Okay? So, just examples of our only in the Philippines. Ayan po ang kanyang common name, scientific name, status, and local name pag meron. Yung iba meron akong mapa kung saan sila makikita. Pero just a run through, this is going to be fast. The Philippine cockatoo, the Catala Foundation in Palawan is spearheading. Sila ang nangunguna sa conservation ng Philippine cockatoo dyan sa Palawan and neighboring islands. So ito, only in the Philippines, you have the Visayan warty pig. Nadidistract ako sa aso namin. Pabugaw naman ang aso. So you have the Visayan warty pig, critical endangered. The Balabak mouse deer, the Balabak mouse deer is yours. Nakakita na ako ng isa nito sa wild. Okay, and this is found in Palawan. And then you have the Tamara, which is found in Mindoro, critically endangered. And the big golden crown flying fox, which are the largest bats in the world. And then you have the Busuanga flat-headed toad, which is, actually it's not a toad, it's a frog. No? It is a near-threatened species, and it is found only in Palawan and Calamianes Islands. No? We did a study on this. Ako po ang nagpangalan sa kanya ng my favorite and beautiful Barbie. There are only 2 barbarulas in the whole world. One is Barbarula busuangensis, and the other one is in Kalimantan, okay, Borneo. So this is Barbarula busuangensis. The other one is Barbarula kalimantanensis. And then the Philippine crocodile is critically endangered. Ayan. Now, the next question is, take note pala, no, if I may go back, take note pala that these are only a few of the many important species which are endemic to the Philippines and which are also threatened. Now, my next chapter is ito. Busuanga Island. Is it diverse? Is it also important? So let's go. Of course, it is. Busuanga Island, mas kilala nyo siya kaysa akin. Inilagay ko lang siya sa mapa. Maliit lang siya. It's about 890 square kilometers. But it is a very important island. It is composed of Busuanga and Coron as municipalities. And its main source of income is ecotourism, fishing, and agriculture. Busuanga is the largest island in the Calamian group of islands in the northern part of Palawan. Nandun siya sa taas. Nagpunta na rin po ako sa Colyon kasi naghanap ako ng barbarola. Okay? And then it has a diversity, a high level of diversity. These are all pictures taken from your island. It is home to a diverse wildlife fauna, similarly endemic to the province of Palawan. The vegetation of Busuanga is diverse. It has brushlands, grasslands, it has some forest lands. Mostly its forest lands are secondary forest, but it has also a forest over limestone or forest over hard rock. Usually, mga hardened rock galing yan sa ilalim ng dagat. Kasi yung Busuanga is a continental island. Umakyat siya, tapos nagpakita siya. And it became a clear island and nagkaroon siya ng buhay. Okay? So let's go to the Busuanga plant species. There are 416 species of plants in Busuanga. There are 252 species in Coron. We could not find details on this, but some of the examples would be the buho, yakal. The dipterocarps are very, very important because these are hardwood. They are used mainly as timber. Now, take note dito pala ha, yung baka nakakalimutan kong sabihin is, ito yung conservation status niya. Endangered ang yakal. Okay? Ang molave ay least concern. Ibig sabihin, hindi siya endangered, hindi siya threatened. Marami siya dyan. So, it is also used for timber. And then, meron tayong the beautiful mapilig, Santos Temon bracteatus. And then, meron din tayong mangkono. This is critically endangered. And then this is endangered, yung mangkono. And then meron tayong katmon. Okay, maganda ang bulaklak nito. And this is Dilenia philippinensis. And then we have the malakatmon. Mas gusto ko to kasi favorite ka-flower ko ang yellow. It's vulnerable. The Nara is endangered. This is Apitong, which is also vulnerable. And then we have mangroves. Of course, mangroves kasi island yan. May mga area sa mangroves. Mangroves parang hindi masyadong nagagandahan ng tao kasi most of the time maputik yan. But mangroves are very, very important. The coastal mangrove forests are found all over Busuanga. It's called Bakawan. It thrives on kung saan nagmi-meet ang fresh water and marine water. Okay? Tawag dyan ay estuarine. Ang tawag dyan ay brackish water din. But, alam nyo kung paano tinalo ni Magellan si Lapu-Lapu noong sumugod siya sa Cebu? Dahil sa mangrove. Yung kwento niyan, kukwento ko pag nagkita-kita tayo sa Busuanga. But the tsunamis in Indonesia, they could have prevented if many years back, they did not cut off the mangrove. Kasi pagdating ng tsunami, pag makapal ang mangrove mo, mababasag ang tsunami sa puno ng mangrove at hindi siya aatake sa isla mo. So yung mga may balak na mag-converse ng mag-transform at magpatay ng mga bakawan, pakiusap, huwag niyong gagawin. Yung mga tao na tinatalian ang puno ng bakawan or sinusugatan ang puno ng bakawan para pasukin ng maalat na tubig, para mamatay si puno ng bakawan, para may dahilan para ikat si bakawan at gawing uling, please, pakiusapan niyo, huwag nilang gagawin. Napakahalaga po ng bakawan. Lugar po yan ng pagkain ng mga isda at lugar po yan ng proteksyon ng isla nyo sa mga catastrophes that can happen in the future. They are harvested due to charcoal production and construction. I know the style that they do. Ikakat mo lang, susugatin mo lang yan, no? Yan lugar na. Mamamatay na yan. At napakaganda niya sa na charcoal at pang fuel, no? Masilab, maalab. Ewan ko ganun yata yun. So these are some examples. You have the Rhizopora apiculata or the bakawang lalaki, and you also have the Rhizopora mucronata, mga details ng bulaklak nila. Okay. And then the comparative guide to mangroves is, there is a book that you can use or you can buy or you can ask for. Pwedeng libre itong mga book references na to, but there is a way to differentiate them, sexual differentiation based on their fruits and flowers as well as on their leaves. Ayan, bilis lang naman. So mga teachers sa science sana ay maganda yan na reference. Okay, ito din is another listing of the plants that are found in the islands and their reproductive and distinct parts. Okay, Inchabihuga, Cerbera manghas, Escabiola, Serica. So, I mean, I'm just giving you a rough run through of how diverse those mangroves are. And then you have the seagrasses. I know one who is doing his study on the dugong. The seagrasses is the favorite place of the excuse me, of the dugong. They spawn here, and this is also their feeding grounds. The dugong is also threatened. So these are the seagrass species of Busuanga. Yan, nakalista lahat. This is the favorite plant or seagrass of the dugong, the Halodule uninervis, the preferred food of the dugong. And then ways of identifying plants are usually basic biological skills that are taught in biology classes. But yes, I would like to emphasize that the morphology of the plants are important in differentiating them. So here is a book that you can use to identify or at least to guide you in plants for Palawan. Ayan ang kanyang downloadable source, no? You can download it from the PCSD website. Kopyahin nyo, picturean nyo para makahingi kayo o makakuha kayo ng kopya as a reference. And then meron din tayong book to Philippine mangroves. And this is from Georgian Primavera, Dr. Georgian Primavera. Ito rin yung connect niya. Download from the Zoological Society of the London website. And then the seagrass reference also, tropical seagrass identification can be taken from here. Okay. And then the plant flora of the Philippines, the guy here is a friend of mine. Kasamahan ko yan nung trumabaho po kami ng research sa Taytay, dyan sa Palawan. Kasama ko po siya sa field work. Si Leonard ko is a very well-known, globally recognized botanist. And he has this digital flora of the Philippines. And you can go to it through the website also. Terrestrial vertebrate fauna. You have approximately 305 species for your island, 10 amphibians, 17 reptiles, 200 birds, 38 mammals. Ito po yung reference kung saan galing yung listahan na yun. So 305 number of terrestrial vertebrate species. This is the summary of the list of Busuanga Island species. Ayan, nakalista. Ma'am, ano naman yan? Puro scientific name, parang ang hirap tandaan. Ito yung endemicity nila. Lahat sila except Oxidosiga ay endemic. Exidosiga, Polypedates, and Sangirana are natives, but the rest are found only in your island or in the Palawan area. You have number of threatened species are 3, number of endemic species are 10 or 70%. So let's go to the pictures. This is the flat-headed frog, which is Barbarula or Barbie. This is the Philippine toad. Okay, meron siyang distinct characteristic yan. And then you have the mangrove frog. And then you have the Busuanga wart frog, the poodle frog, very common to. And then painted narrow-mouthed toad. You have the brown striped tree frog, the Pulion frog, the Southeast Asian wood frog, and the Palawan rock frog. Ang ganda-ganda nito. Ang frog na to. Sa ilog nyo lang po makikita yan. At sa mga ano siya sa ibabaw ng rocks. So the Barbie, ayan, si Barbie in close-up. These are the areas of distribution of the Barbie. Okay, oh, look it up. Laging nasa tubig yan. Rare siyang lumalabas sa lupa. Pero lagi siyang nandun lang. Hindi siya lalabas sa ilog. Mamamatay siya pag lumabas siya sa ilog. And then you have the Ingerophrynus. Meron siyang, ito yung distinction niya, meron siyang cranial crest. I-differentiate natin siya mamaya doon sa sa Ingerophrynus, sa Rhinella marina or sa Karag, no? Yung invasive alien species. So it's all over Palawan. And then you have the Limnonectes acanthi, found only in your place also, the Busuanga wart frog. Ito minsan kinokolekta ng mga tao at kinakain. Ito yung distribution nila. Ginagawa nilang adobo. And then the Pulcrana mollendorfi, the Pulion frog, are the true frogs all over Palawan siya. Okay. And then Oxidosiga is very common. It's found in many parts of the Philippines and even other parts of Southeast Asia. And then you have the Polypedates macrotis. Is also least concerned. This is arboreal. Nasa mga puno-puno siya sa mga dahon-dahon. So Southeast Asia din siya. And Malaysia, etc. Nandito ang Pilipinas. Nandito ang Palawan. Okay. And then you have the narrow-mouth frog, which is, ito ay endemic sa Pilipinas, ha. Ito ay, tingnan niyo yung likod niya, parang naka-drawing na tao. Okay. This is Calula picta. Meron kasing nakapasok na sa Pilipinas na Calula pulcra, and yung Calula pulcra, black itong likod niya. Yun po ay pag nakita nyo, patayin nyo kaagad kasi yun ay invasive alien species. And then you have the Sangirana, Sanguinea, the Calamianes frog, although it is found in the whole of Palawan. And then the Staurois nobilis, the Palawan rock frog. So which one is Barbie and which one is Oxidosiga laevis? Oh, magkamukha sila, di ba? Okay, tuturo ko sa inyo. Ito, makikita nyo, hiwa-hiwala yung daliri niya. Ito din kahit sa paa, hiwa-hiwalay. Ito, meron siyang web both sa paa, sa kamay, tsaka sa paa niya. Ito ang native in and endemic in Palawan. This is the Barbie and this is the Oxidosiga. This is a full aquatic frog. This is a semi-aquatic. Ito kaya niyang mabuhay kahit sa mga disturbed areas, kahit maliit na part of water only. This one will not thrive in disturbed areas of water. Hindi siya mabubuhay kapag acidic yung ilog at pag disturb. No, diyan sa Kingfisher's Park, dati nandun lang siya sa baba. Pero nung dumami ng tao, makikita natin siya doon sa upper part ng river systems. Gustong-gusto niya ng bubbly water, yung flowing water, yung gumagalaw na tubig. Okay, kung alam niyo yung Bulalakaw Falls, sino nakapunta na sa inyo sa Bulalakaw Falls? Sa El Nido po yung Bulalakaw Falls. Doon sa binabagsakan ng tubig, nandun sila, marami sila doon. Nung araw. Hindi ko alam ngayon. Pero that is how you distinguish the Barbie from the Oxydosiga or from the Oxy. Now, the Philippine toad or the Ingerophrynus philippinicus versus the invasive cane toad. How do you differentiate them? Okay. Ito po, cranial crest ang tawag dyan. Ito, baby pa siya, may cranial crest niya. This is a baby Ingerophrynus or a baby Philippine toad. This is an adult Philippine toad. The karag or the invasive toad has no cranial crest. Kita nyo, wala siyang cranial crest. Pag nakita nyo siya ganyan, patayin nyo agad unless huhulihin nyo siya para magturo ng zoology or dissection. No? Pareho sila halos ng characteristics, pero this one is not a native of the Philippines. It is an invasive species. This one is found only in Palawan, in your place. So value this because this gives your place, our country, its distinction in global importance in biodiversity conservation. The reptiles of Busuanga, hindi na natin puntahan yung listahan. Tingnan na lang natin yung picture para mabilis. You have the Porosus is also threatened. It is actually, both of them are critically endangered. But the Porosus is present in Southeast Asian regions. The Mindorensis is found only in Mindoro. The original Philippine crocodile was found in Mindoro, but it is already extinct in Mindoro. Wala nang Philippine crocodile sa Mindoro kasi pinatay na ng mga tao dahil takot sila. Ngayon pati lahat ng buhaya pinapatay na. But they are now critically endangered. The distinction between the native Crocodylus mindorensis and Porosus, si Porosus ay malaki. Halos 3 times the size of Philippine crocodile is the Crocodylus Porosus. Sino nga yung recent na namatay na sikat na Crocodylus Porosus? Naalala nyo?
Si Lolong.
Sir Lolong, nasa National Museum na po siya ngayon. Okay? As yung tinaxidermy na siya. Ang pagkakaiba ng Mindorensis sa Porosus ay itong post-occipital scales. Ito po, nandito. Ito, malalaki siya. Ito, pino, maliliit. Okay? This is Porosus. Pareho silang merong ganito. Ayan. Pero dito, pagkatapos ng immediately after nung pinakatenga niya, ito, meron siyang post-occipital scales. Meron ito, wala dito. Tapos malaki ito, mas maliit. Okay? So ito ay native sa atin, ito ay hindi, pero pareho silang critically endangered. Ayan. Yeah. And then you have the kaura, the box turtle. This is not endemic. This is another threatened species. This is vulnerable. Okay, the Asian leaf turtle. And then you have the griffin's skink, the mangrove skink, and the common sand skink. Vulnerable, least concerned in this. And then the Palawan monitor lizard. Okay, meron kayong sarili nyong monitor lizard, no? It is also considered as threatened species. And then you have the snakes. Sinong takot sa inyo sa snake? This is the Marin's Dronsbach. This is the short-headed Palawan short-headed snake. And you also have cobras there. No? You have the Naja sumatrana. Isa lang yan, magkakaiba lang ang itsura niya. And then you have the common mock viper. Hindi po siya viper. nagkukunwari lang po siyang viper para matakot tayo sa kanya at hindi natin siya lapitan at patayin. So, mock viper lang siya. And then you have the real viper, the Trimerosaurus flavomaculatus, which is highly venomous. Pero yan po ay sa totoo lang, kapag hindi mo naman bibiglain at tatakutin, pwede mo siyang lapitan at huwag mo lang siyang iistorbohin. Hindi kanya, kung natutulog siya, matutulog lang siya. Hindi siya katulad ng cobra na hahabulin ka ng cobra. Pag nakakita kayo ng cobra, takbo! Pero ito, pwedeng hi, pipicturean kita, i-video kita. Hindi ako maglilikot, hindi kita ito-threaten. It is docile, no? Hindi siya yung aggressive katulad ng cobra. Okay? So, sabi ni Sir Manny, ituro ko daw sa inyo kung paano mag-differentiate. O de, ganito na lang. Ayan. Usually, hindi ko naman alam kung nakakita kayo ng snake. Makikipagtitigan pa ba kayo para makita niyo yung pupils niya? Usually kasi, ang snake na venomous ay pahaba yung kanyang pupils. The rest would be bilog ang mata. The others, although ito, bilog din ang mata, no? Pero yung most of them have vertical pupils. And then yung ulo, ang ulo kapag triangular na ganyan, okay, that is a viper. A water snake is non-venomous. May apat kasi na klase ng ipin or fangs sa snakes. Ito walang fangs. So kahit kagatin ka niyan, hindi ka mamamatay. Yung ipin niya maiiwan sa balat mo, pupurutin mo na lang ganyan. Pero syempre matatakot ka, no? Kailangan niya yung ipin, pangkain niya ng isda. Opistoglophus ay yung fangs niya nasa dulo. So maliit lang yan usually. And may venom yan, pero pwedeng malagnat ka, mamaga yung kakagatin niya, pero hindi mo ikamamatay yung pagkagat niya. So these are the opistoglyph, pwedeng magka-allergy ka, etc. But the Proteroglyphus and the Solenoglyphus, ito yung vipers, nandito ang mga elapids, nandito yung mga cobra, okay, at mga coral snakes. Ito ngayon ang venomous. But out of the more than 100 species of snakes that we have in the Philippines, there are only about 30 species which are venomous. Most of them are in the sea, mga sea snakes sila. And the few that are found on land are classified only into 3. Cobras, coral snakes, and vipers. Yun lang. The rest of the other snakes are non-venomous. So why kill all the snakes, di ba? 100 plus yan. Tapos ang venomous lang, ano nga? Viper, cobra, and yung nasa lupa, viper, cobra, and coral snakes. The rest are sea snakes. Hindi kanya nga makakagat kasi nasa dagat siya. At pag nasa dagat naman siya, mabilis siya, hindi siya interesado sa tao. Isda ang hahabulin niya. Kapag ang sea snakes ay lumanding or they, of course, pupunta sila sa lupa para matulog, para magpahinga. Yung alam niyo yung Chicken and Egg Island, pinuntahan ko po yun. Wow, ang daming sea snakes. Wow, naglakad po ako in between snakes. Kasi sila pag nasa island, matutulog at magpapahinga lang sila. Kung hindi mo sila tatapakan at sasaktan, hindi ka nila, dead maka lang doon, hindi ka nila aanuhin. Okay? So, they are not threatening in island yung mga sea snakes and sea kraits. Active sila sa tubig and they go out to sea. So, will you be afraid or will you be killing the rest of the other snakes? Dapat hindi na. Ang cobra, usually makikita mo nasa mga grass areas. Ang viper makikita mo sa mga puno, sa mga forest areas. Ang coral snakes, medyo may mga nakita ako dyan sa mga grassland areas dyan when I went there the last time. Okay, pero ang nakita ko patay na nasa may gilid ng kalsada. Siguro pinatay. Ang coral snakes, yung mga colorful na mga snakes, wala dun sa example na naibigay ko. Pero nakalimutan kong maglagay. But you have, the coral snakes are small relatively maiikli lang sila. Ang pinakamalalaki dyan yung cobras. Okay? Clear? And so you also have yung sa tail, although hindi ko alam kung magagawaan nyo pa to, no? Usually non-venomous snakes have 2 scales on their tail, dalawang magkapatong. Pag pag venomous snakes, buo yung scale nila sa lower portion ng kanilang sa may tail area. Vent, this is yung lugar na, ito yung scale na nagtatakip sa kanilang puwet. So, vent. How snake venom affects the body systems. It can affect your nervous system, your circulatory system, and your muscle system. I was envenomated by a viper, but I survived. Okay? That was when I was in Taytay, Palawan. That is God's grace on me. It was a miracle that I survived, but I'm alive. The snake, medyo, kaya ako na-envenomate kasi naawa ako sa kanya dahil nagkamali yung staff ko sa pagtatali sa kanya. Na medyo aksidente yung nangyari. But yeah, this you can experience dizziness, fever, respiratory difficulty, thermal problem, bigla kang giginawin na maginaw. And then magkakaroon ka ng muscular convulsions, pwede ka rin magka-nausea and vomiting, and rapid heart movements. So what do you do? Of course, hingi ka ng tulong sa marunong tumulong sa'yo. Okay, do not cut or bite the side. No? You can clean it, you can wash it. Kung kaya mong paduguin ang hindi mo sinusubuatan, paduguin mo. Now, don't try to suck the venom. Don't try to apply tourniquet. Old school yan. Mali na yan ngayon. Pwede mong paduguin pero huwag kang magpapa-tourniquet. Now, do not leave the wound above the heart or the chest. Kung pwede, i-flat mo or nasa taas yung body mo at yung lugar ay nasa mas mababang lugar, yung nakagat. And then takbo sa emergency. And huwag kayong mag-take ng any other medication except that is prescribed by the doctor. Okay, I hope this is helpful for your daily practice. So next, the birds. Ayan, madami sila. Ayan, we have, ito kasi yung Palawan endemic birds. And then you have the, nadoble. And then you have the, how we got the list. No? There was a survey by Lepage in 2020. And he came up with 230 lists of birds in Calamian Island. Now that is accessible in the website. So these are the examples. Ito yung pinangalan sa island nila Dr. Manny Reyes, regalo ng kilit. So that is the kilit or the rocket tail. Ganda niya, no? It is a fruit eater. And then you have the Palawan hornbill, the Anthracoceros marche. It's also a fruit eater. And then you have the Palawan blue flycatcher. This is the male and this is the female. And mas colorful. Sa birds po, mas colorful talaga ang female kaysa sa mas colorful ang male kaysa sa female. Kasi yung male ang nanliligaw sa babae. Ang babae ginagawang as plain as possible. Bakit? Sige, pag-isipan nyo. Hindi ko sasagutin, pero yeah, talagang mas nanliligaw ang lalaki sa babae, kaya kailangan mas gawin niya ang lahat ng kaya niyang magawa para si babaeng nagtatago ay ma-attract at lumabas, para siya ay patulan or sagutin ng yes. Okay, so you have the Physedula platinae or the Palawan flycatcher. May bristles po yan, may parang bigo-bigoting balahibo yan. Panghuli niya ng insect. O di ba importante? Ayaw nyo ng maraming insekto? Ayan ang kaibigan nyo, si Palawan flycatcher. And then si Blue Paradise flycatcher, ayan nakikita nyo yan, bristles. O mas obvious dito. Ang ganda niya, di ba? Woo! So you have, this is a young one and this is an adult one, and it helps maintain populations of insects by eating them. And then you have the yellow-throated leaf bird. Okay, the Chloropsis palawanensis. Hindi niyan basta-basta mapapansin pag nasa puno mukha siyang dahon, kaya leaf bird. And then you have the Palawan flower pecker. Ito naman, ang hilig niya ay itong lalaki, itong babae. Ang hilig niya ay mga bulaklak. Siyempre, kaya flower pecker siya. And the lovely sunbird, the male and the female. Kita nyo? Ang ganda ng ang gwapo ng mga lalaki. Plain ang mga babae. And then you have here the other birds. You have the spotted throated flameback. This is actually a woodpecker. And then the sulfur-bellied bulbul, the Palawan teat, the white-vented black shama, and then the Palawan bulbul, and then you have the ashy-fronted bulbul. Alam niyo mga salitang bulbul na yan, mga Amerikano at foreigners ang mga naglagay ng mga ganyang mga pangalan noong araw pag naghahanap sila ng common name. So naging ano na lang, wala sa kanila yan. Sa atin may ibig sabihin yan sa Tagalog. So this is a place where you can find references or information on the sounds of birds if you might want to be familiar with them. Open it up and you'll see, lalagay niya sa'yo, ito yung ibon, ito yung sound niya, mapapakinggan niya, ito yun, no, tatakbo yung kanyang sound dyan. Ah, ganun pala. Pagpunta mo sa field, pag narinig mo, ooh! Sasabi mo kung ano yung ibon. Now, the endemic mammals, you have 11. And so, let's go to your families, pangolin. Naku, biktima na ang marami. Ito yun, endangered pangolins. At sinisisi sila sa COVID. They are seized with their scales. Okay, and then you have the Axis calamianensis. Ito naman, inuubos ng mga local people dahil masarap ang kanyang karne at kinukuha din nila yung kanyang coat. Sana hindi kayo kasama dyan sa bumibili ng karne ng Axis calamianensis. And then you have the Palawan porcupine, which is also endemic. Ayan. And then you have the Palawan flying fox. Again, this is a fruit-eating fox or fruit bat. Okay. So fruit bat, malalaki yan. Higante, gaganyan. And they are definitely beautiful and important in your island. And then you have the Palawan bearded pig. It is threatened. Marami rin ang hinuhuli dyan at medyo threatened siya dahil sa karne niya. Okay, ito ay rare na rin siya. Palawan bearded. And then the other endemic mammals of Busuanga include the spiny rat, the Busuanga tree squirrel. Okay. Ang squirrels natin sa Pilipinas nasa Busuanga at Mindanao lang. Wala po sa Luzon, wala po sa Visayas. You have the tree shrew, you have the stink badger. Ito ayaw nyo sa amoy. And then you have the yellow-faced horseshoe bat. And then you have a tree mouse there also. Now, native mammals of Busuanga would include the common palm civet. You have the leopard cat. May kasamaan po kami dito sa office na pinag-aaralan niya yung mga yan, thesis niya. Actually, dati, na, pero they continue to do the research. So you have the Malayan field rat and the Mueller's rat. And of course, the long-tailed macaque, which in some places are becoming pests actually kasi hindi na sila takot sa tao. Nag-iistorbo na sila. And the rest of the other bats, these are insect bats. This is a fruit bat. These are most of these, this one are insect bats. Yung mga kakaiba yung mukha, kumakain sila ng insekto. Imagine, each one of those tiny bats would eat about 300 or 3,000 small insects overnight. Pag nawala yung bats na yan at pinagpapatay niya yan, yung kinakain nilang insekto, wala nang kakain. So, susugurin kayo ng insekto sa buong magdamag dahil walang bats na kumain. Kahit na gaano kakapal ng kulambo nyo, hindi nila kayang, hindi nyo kayang i-drive away yung mga insektong yan. So these insectivorous bats are very, very important for insects population control. The fruit-eating bats are those that facilitate ito. Yung mga mukhang aso, di ba? Ang cute niya, mukha siyang chihuahua. Okay? They are actually the ones that facilitate fruit eaters kasi siya. So, plant distribution. And then we have the marine turtles and mammals. We have the Calamian Islands having rich diversity of marine habitats. There are, 7 species of marine turtles in the whole world. 4 species are found in Palawan. 1, loggerhead, green sea turtle, leatherback, and hawksbill turtle. Actually, there are 5 species found in the whole Philippines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 2, the Natator depressus and Lepidoptechelis kempi, are not found in the Philippines. Kita nyo yan? 7 species sa buong mundo, 5 nasa Pilipinas, 4 nasa Busuanga, nasa Palawan. Ganun kahalaga ang biodiversity ng Palawan and Busuanga. So the life cycle of the turtle is that it lays egg on the island, and then as a little turtle, it goes to the sea, lives there, grows to be an adult, and then when it is nesting time, it goes back to the island. It is the female that goes back to the island. The question mark here is, where are the males? Why? What are they doing? Yan. Baka gusto nyong aralin. No? Wala pang masyadong monitoring ng marine turtles. Kulang pa tayo sa kaalaman. So these are the beautiful 4 species found in Busuanga. This loggerhead is endangered. Leatherback is critically endangered. Okay. Hawksbill turtle is critically endangered. And green sea turtle is endangered. Marine turtles nest all year around Calamianes. Major threats to sea turtles in the islands include hunting, egg collection, and pollution also. Kasi kumakain sila ng napagkakamala nilang jellyfish ang plastic at maraming namamatay sa kanila dahil sa garbage. And then marine mammals of Busuanga, you have dolphins and the dugong. Ayan. So you have the dugong, the sea cow, the beautiful sea cow, which thrives in the sea grasses. So island people yan, nasa beach area yan, no? Doon sa kung saan merong mga sea grasses. And however, meron yan, in 2013, a dugong drowned after being entangled in the net of a seaweed farm in Busuanga. O, aksidente yan sa Busuanga. Na ano siya, sa ibang lugar, aboriginal species, this is Australia, they hunt the dugong with harpoon and they drown them. Ito, sana naman maingatan sila na hindi sila ma-aksidente doon sa mga seaweed farms. Okay, the areas of the distribution in the whole world would be this red area there, but it is all over in the Philippines. So you have the common bottlenose dolphin, and you have the spotted dolphin, pantropical spotted dolphin, least concern. The bottlenose dolphin, which is also least concern. The Indo-Pacific bottlenose dolphin, which is threatened. The dwarf spinner dolphin. The gray spinner dolphin. And then you have, ayon, last chapter. So what? Because there are threats. Okay, and because there are threats, let's see what the threats are. Okay, I summarize it into 5. Hiccup. Habitat loss and degradation, invasive alien species, climate change, overexploitation, and wildlife trafficking and pollution. These are examples of habitat destruction and degradation. Although itong picture na to is over collection po ito. Okay, this is, ayan, transform natin ang forest, sinira natin siya, sinisira natin ang corals. And then, ayan, naglalagay pa tayo ng cyanide para makahulog tayo, nag-over, collect tayo, sinisira natin yung lugar. Nag-introduce tayo ng invasive alien species. Kita niyan, kumakain siya ng mas maliit na palaka. And wala pa siya sa Busuanga, kaya bantayan nyo pag nakakita kayo ng ganyan, patayin nyo agad para hindi siya dumami. Meron na daw nakapasok sa Palawan. Dapat hindi siya makapasok sa isla nyo. Bantayan nyo yan, ha? Huwag nyo yang hahayaang talunin niya yung inyong Ingerophrynus philippinicus. And then the climate change, it's a global, the global occurrence na pinagsama-sama lahat ng epekto ng ginawa natin sa mundo, kaya nagbabago ang ating klima. And ramdam naman po natin kung ano yung mga pagbabagong nangyayari. So overexploitation, ayan, guilty tayo dyan. Pangolins are highly threatened. Ang galing ng mga smugglers ng pangolin dyan sa Palawan. And then ito yung overexploitation, wildlife trafficking. China, Hong Kong is at the heart of the global wildlife trafficking. This was a news report in 2019. And then pollution, ayan, na ano siya sa plastic. Ito, kinakain niya. Ito, hindi na siya makapagbukas ng bibig niya kasi pumasok yung ring doon sa kanyang nose, nostril area. So ayan, namatay na lang siya. Hindi na siya nakakain. Diba? Nakakaiyak. Tapos pollution. By the way, ito yun, the amount we use daily, sachets, shopping bags, plastic labo, ito is an example, and then diapers. Wow, ang laki. And then Palawan pangolin trade gives you a picture of how many or how much is it being smuggled. No? I won't discuss na lang in detail. I'm just showing now that you know. What should you do? May gagawin ba tayo? Sana na-appreciate nyo yung lecture ko. And toward the end, now that we know they are important, now that we know we are threatened, what can we do? We need to remove the threats to biodiversity. Let us remove the hiccup. What is the hiccup? Habitat degradation, invasive alien species, climate change, overexploitation, and pollution. Plant trees to restore habitats. Ang panglaban ko sa hiccup ay pairs. P, eradicate invasive species. A, advocate against climate change. R, report overexploitation and wildlife trafficking. And S, stop pollution by practicing proper solid waste management. So, the hiccup, may katapat ang hiccup, it should be pairs. Plant trees, plant all other types of plants, eradicate IAS, advocate against climate change. Report overexploitation kasi hinuhuli yan, that is illegal. That is a bad practice. So it should not be allowed. Ipapulis nyo, ipabarangay nyo. May karapatan ang pulis at ang mga barangay at ang menro para hulihin ang mga nag-wildlife trafficking at nag-overexploit. And then stop pollution. Madali namang i-text yan sa police. Okay, stop over pollution. So in the end, this is my last slide. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will only love what we understand, and we will understand only what we love. I had taught you a big amount of information today. I hope you understand its importance. And I hope you are proud that you have such a rich biodiversity in your island. And I hope you will hold hand in hand to contribute and distribute the information so that we can enforce or we can practice biodiversity enhancement. Starting with your campus, starting with your home, starting with your island, and finally in the whole Philippines. Starting with yourself, starting with your family, starting with your students and continuing on to the bigger community, influencing the whole generations coming after us and coming after the generations that we have taught. So we hold a high level of responsibility. Teach, practice, advocate, and influence. Let's do biodiversity enhance. Thank you very much. These are my references.